Yes, McGrath comes in. It's on its way. It's there. The miracle on grass.
Going with a kick to full forward. Cloak, not quite. Blair, Collingwood back in front.
The seed. He delays the give. Franklin. This is Buddy Franklin. This is the greatest show. Poor fans can't bear to watch. They led by 28 points at one stage, but the perfect storm is erupted. Oh, who else? McDonald.
Round 17 of the AFL season really had everything you could want as a fan. If you want to see offense, you got that. If you want to see crazy, close games, buzzer beaters, after the siren stuff, you absolutely got that. If you want to see great defense, I'm not sure if you necessarily got that. I would say it was more just really atrocious offense in some of these games. But, you know, we got really, if you're still wanting more from this round, and besides your team getting a win, is I'm still in the same boat with you, stop bitching because we don't really need to. But, ladies and gentlemen, the Gold Coast Suns bandwagon is in full swing, and I am heading it. Of course, I'm your host, Ross Allen, joined alongside by the best in the business, Coach Donnie Hess, our official AFL correspondent. And, Coach, how are we feeling after what was a great round for you personally as a fan, and just a great round, and another great round to be a fan, honestly? Probably top 3 most exciting rounds, arguably.
It's definitely up there for intrigue. I will definitely say that, because you had a little bit of everything. You had the marquee matchup. You had the Geelong Melbourne game to start the week. You had kind of what some people would call the chance of elimination match between Sydney and the Western Bulldogs. You had the scare of a life. You had the scare of the lifetime in the Collingwood game. You had the buzzer. You had the kick after the sirens. It was a little bit of everything. So this round was absolutely incredible. As soon as I kind of thought, okay, normalization, normal round might continue, then all heck broke loose again each and every day. So fantastic round of footy. The ladder just keeps getting as tight as a frog's bottom, and most people that know that joke, that a frog's bottom is watertight. So, man, is this ladder going to be quite interesting.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, like I usually am, but it might have been a while, but was this a Gold Coast game the first game winner with the after the siren kick?
No, this is not. And the crazy part about it is this is the second time it's happened to Richmond. Carmichael Hunt for Gold Coast beat Richmond in basically about the similar fashion. Gold Coast comes back late in the game, gets a chance to kick a goal after the siren, and then, as we saw this week, Noah Anderson is the one with his name going down in the record books, and I'll talk about it a little bit in the headlines. There's a little almost irony in the winner a little bit. I'll talk about that here in the headlines here in just a second.
Oh, I love that. But ladies and gentlemen, what we got for you guys this round is taking a look at a team that might not even be able to make the top 4 at this point, a team that is definitely on their way to a flag. Maybe not. I might be getting a little bit ahead of myself there, but let's stay hype nonetheless. There is some potentially damning news coming out of Sydney, but also there's a mountain of salt to go a lot right alongside it due to who published the story. So we'll get to that one. North has moved on from David Noble and is just making things even worse as a GWS fan. And we're going to take a look at some of the worst performances and some of the best performances and some of the biggest redemption arcs of the round so far. But before we get into Coach Donnie's headlines, of course, you can make sure to find all of our stuff over at thefourthandlong.com. Everything AFL, thefourthandlong.com/AFL. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that fun stuff. I could keep talking for hours, and you'll hate me more than you already do. So go ahead, just find that wherever if you get the chance. You subscribe and all that fun stuff if you really want to, if you want to be stuck with us. Huge thank you in advance. But, Coach, it's time. Headline time, baby. What you got for us?
Oh man, so let's just go off at the headlines. Man, there were some fun ones. There was absolutely fantastic. We'll start off first game of the round provided us a big one. Geelong gets big win over D's to take the top spot on the ladder, and I must admit this game was a little bit of a roller coaster for me, because you look at it. everybody kind of thought Melbourne was back. Everybody kind of thought Melbourne was playing good footy, and they step up against the Geelong team down in GMHBA, and they kind of handeth the smacketh down on a D's team that now there's questions. Like, legitimately, there are questions.
They're back.
Will the D's stay in the top 4 now? Because their run home is not simple. There's a lot of teams that could be quite dangerous to them if they get on a roll, so it'd be very fascinating. And then
I might be spoiling something, but watch out for our tips a little bit later in the show as well, because no team is safe this round, Donnie. We could be seeing some insane upsets.
Very much so, and the good old Cats. I hate saying it because they're not old; they're just experienced. Because the Cats are at the top of the ladder, and now they have got a lot of people talking Cats premiership potentially, because if their opportunities to play most of the games at home, they're playing really good footy. I mean, it's hard to beat the dynamic duo of Tommy Hawkins and Jeremy Cameron up front. So the Cats got a lot of belief now. So I'm very fascinated to see how that goes. We jump to Friday night. Sydney dominates Dogs, putting the Dogs' finals chances in the doghouse. I'm not trying to go pun here, but legitimately, this really. I've seen a lot more people talk about the Dogs' lack of play more than Sydney's better play. So it's very interesting, kind of how dichotomy for a lot of people. Do you take this as Sydney was just that good, it made the Dogs look normal, or were the Dogs' meager performance the reason that Sydney looked really, really good? I'm kind of in that boat. I'm kind of 50-50. I think Sydney came out, and they even, which shocked me, that the Dogs weren't ready for Sydney to come out breathing fire after the pathetic performance against Essendon, which left Sydney with a loss.
Right about your take on Sydney in this game from last round.
we kept saying it. I said Horse Longmire is going to give them a mighty spray, and they're going to come out with their tails up, and they're going to come out breathing fire. And that first 15 minutes, it was like Western Bulldogs did not expect it. It was the most fascinating thing ever to see a Dogs team that you would have thought had been warned. Sydney's going to come out breathing fire. You better be ready with your fire retardant suit, or you're going to get burned. And charred to a crisp they were in that first quarter. Absolutely plastered them. And the Dogs really just could never bounce back from then on. So it was a very interesting kind of game, in my opinion, because, again, there's more questions now on the Doggies than there is on positives on the Sydney. So it would be very interesting to see how this next round goes, especially with the Doggies' performance. And then we've kind of discussed it. Upsets and close calls dominate the weekend. Collingwood survived the North Melbourne ruse, which even I must say, watching that game over in replay, I couldn't believe what I was watching. The fact that Collingwood for 3 quarters was getting beaten up by the North Melbourne ruse, who, as we had kind of said in this podcast, they were a guaranteed 4 points for the longest time. And oh my gosh, it was like Collingwood just went, whoa, okay. And the fourth quarter, they woke up, they started playing better, they get the win. But you almost feel bad for North, because that was their perfect chance to kind of get a stabilizing win for the season. And they just fell apart in the last hurdle. Collingwood again showing that kind of championship caliber. They find a way to win when they probably shouldn't have. So that was very fascinating. The Gold Coast, after the siren goal, which, I mean, for all of the non-Richmond fans, it was the most epic thing ever, because goal after the siren. I mean, I think everybody's seen the video of the little kid in the Gold Coast that the father recorded.
That was amazing, Donnie. Can we talk about that one for a second?
That was absolutely.
That little man was going crazy. I love it.
And as I said in a couple of my tweets, and I've seen a lot of people respond the same way, is that I think we've all been through that emotional roller coaster, whether it's been in footy or in other sports. It's like you're so excited that you've got a chance to win, but you're like, oh my God, I can't believe it. But there's still a chance you could not win. So you can see just the agony and then the elation when the ball goes through. He grabs his flag. He's so excited. He actually grabs the wrong end, which is absolutely just gold. And then when he gets it, he waves that sucker as hard as he possibly can. You absolutely love that. Like, legitimately.
They need to bring him on the field they need him to run them onto the field next game.
That would be absolutely great. But I love that video. But that just shows you the passion. And you want to see more of that. You want to see more young men, young women excited about the Gold Coast Suns, because if you can get a loyal fan base there, you've got a chance to have a really good team. And they've got legitimately have a team that could be a finals contender. They could get there, but they just have to have a few things go their way. They're still in it, both of them in Port. I think this weekend, because of Richmond, because of St. Kilda, and because of the Western Bulldogs all losing, they have now been dragged into that opportunity. I think we talked about it last podcast that it could have been down to only 9 teams when it comes to making the finals. We're almost up to 12 now because of
this
that
round
loss.
was huge.
That loss brings Richmond now. There's only a game difference between Richmond all the way down to Gold Coast. So there's a ton of things, and then we'll go over it really quickly because of our host here. Port thumped GWS in what was an absolutely horrible game for the Giants, and losing Phil Davis to that tragic hamstring injury. My thoughts go out to him. I really hope this isn't his career over, but potentially there's a possibility, considering he already destroyed one hamstring, and in this play he destroyed the other one. So being 35, I'm really, really worried this could be the end of the man that is Phil Davis, an incredible gentleman in the game and a respected man in the game. So kind of mired a little bit, but Port Adelaide, I mean, legitimately, if you are a team in the top 8, you don't want to face this Port Adelaide team because they are humming. And the scary part is they still don't have their main ruckman. Scott Lysett is still not back from his shoulder injury, yet Jeremy Finlayson has been just this magical surprise being in the ruck, but
has he been one of the most I think his impact on the field, especially given that he's really playing out of position in a way, he might be one of the more underrated guys. Maybe it's just because of the position where Port Adelaide is in when it comes to the ladder, but I'm glad you bring him up because he's a guy that really needs a little bit more credit for his for any team's success. It's coming a lot from Finlayson.
Yeah, comeback player of the year, as some people could say, is there's so many good stories. You've got Dougherty at the Saints, or at the Blues. You got Paddy McCartan with the Sydney Swans, and then you've got Jeremy Finlayson, who last year could not find his way onto the park at GWS, and he goes back to South Australia, and he's found his niche. And surprisingly, it's not in the forward line, it's in the ruck position. So it's really, really fascinating. So again, Port and the Gold Coast Suns right now, it's like if you're supporting a team that's outside, you're not going to make the finals. You almost want a bandwagon for these two because they've definitely got a shot, and they are within a shout of getting into this finals, considering right now between 8th and 12th, there is a 1-game difference. 4 points is it. So
you guys are more than welcome to jump on the. You guys are more than welcome to jump on the Gold Coast bandwagon with me. I've been trying to get this the wheels spinning since last season, even though there wasn't a reason to spin them last year. Well, there's a couple. But this year, there's definitely a lot more. So go ahead, join me. I'll head it. It'll be super fun. Join the Gold Coast. At least over here stateside, I'll head that one. I'm not sure. There might be an Aussie over there that headed a little bit harder than I have. But you guys, go ahead. If you were listening last season, I would talk about them every round, even when they might not have deserved it. But keep Collingwood in North Melbourne in your heads, because we're going to be talking about them later, as well as the Gold Coast Suns. We're going to get that in a second. But one of the things that I wanted to ask you, Donnie, before we got on to our overreactions of the round, and that is, there is one thing on my head that I was trying to debate with, and I think you might be able to want to give me the answer here. Okay. And is that, let's see, how do I want to phrase this? Is it, I think I'll just say, is this the best Geelong team we've seen in the past decade?
Ooh, that's tough, because Geelong had some damn good teams there in the early 2000s. Now that's a little bit more than 10 years. You're talking 7, 9. Yeah, you're talking let's 7, 9, and 11.
Yeah.
It's hard not to say that, because they're so experienced, they're so talented, and again, they just beat Melbourne without their best defender in Tom Stewart. That's the other thing that I find fascinating about that game, is that,
and it really could have been much more of a blow if you take a look at how many damn behinds Geelong kicked in this one too.
And the crazy part about that game is the fact is that was, Melbourne actually played pretty well. They still are having their issues going forward, and I think right now that is the one thing that scares me. If I'm a Demons supporter, the one thing that scares me is their lack of cohesion going forward. The superstars in back, superstars in midfield, but once they hit inside 50, it's kind of barren right now. I mean, Fritz is playing well, but Fritz didn't have a very good game. Kazi Pickett again is kind of like night and day. He has his times when he's absolutely electric. He's scoring goals, and then there's games where he disappears and doesn't make an impact on the game. And then Ben Brown, unfortunately, has not worked like he did last year. Last year, he was the stabilizing factor that really kind of got the D's going in the second half of the year and got them on their run to win the flag last year. And he's just not there. McDonald is out hurt. Wiedemann can't get a game. So
does that discredit Geelong's win here?
I don't think it discredits just Geelong's, because I think it's a little bit of Geelong's defense has just been very, very, very good this year. And again, without their best player too, to have that type of performance, to take a Melbourne team that can put up points really quickly and to hold them, I think it was 63 points altogether. And without Tommy Stewart, it kind of tells you Geelong could be even scarier when Stewart comes back. Like that's how scary this. Like, there are people that are jumping off the Melbourne bandwagon and jumping onto the Geelong Premiership wagon now. Like the Geelong Premiership wagon is growing because of this performance against Melbourne. I'm still a little hesitant on that, because again, Geelong is notorious for getting into the finals and then finding a way to fall over a hurdle on the way there, so,
or to make it to the grand final and then not be close.
Exactly. So that's kind of like, so I'm one of those that, and it's almost kind of, I've heard this said a lot over here, there's two seasons. There's the regular season, or home and away, and then there's the finals. It is a completely different animal. Like, you almost kind of say the only thing that the regular season or home and away season is there for is to seed for the finals. That's really it. Because once you step into finals, it is a completely different animal. It is a completely different game. It is a completely
everyone's 0-0.
Different thing. Yeah. So it's very fascinating. So again, this is right now playing for who gets home field advantage. Again, I say asterisk, because again, because
Geelong's being screwed.
Well, no, let me bring this topic up, and I promise I'll make this super quick, as I hear a lot of people talking about integrity because of the Brisbane Lions game against Essendon, where they were out 9 players. And now all of a sudden they're like, well, COVID's a possibility. What about the integrity of the finals if somebody gets COVID? All due respect, again, and this is me to Australians, and again, and maybe this is my American brain. I don't think of it the same way you do. Stop talking about integrity when you force Geelong to play home games at the MCG against Collingwood, Richmond, or Melbourne. I'm sorry. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say this very, very loud, and I hope this gets spread in Australians. So Australians, if you see this, clip this video and send this to the big AFL programs. Stop talking about integrity when half of your comments about integrity are bull. They're bollocks. They're buggered up because Geelong doesn't get to play its home games at its home stadium. I understand that the AFL wants to make money. 100% understand that. But stop screwing a club because they have a smaller ground and they have a home field advantage just because you won 100,000 at the MCG. Stop talking about integrity. Stop talking about it, because the league in and of itself does not have integrity by the way it is scheduled and by the way it is adjudicated at times. So I'm really kind of tired of this. We're not even at the finals yet, and I'm already irritated because people are like, well, COVID could throw the integrity. I'm sorry, the 22 game home and away schedule doesn't have a lot of integrity because people are playing home games in a road environment at another team's home ground. How is that integrity? Come on. I'm sorry. So I just wanted to get that off my chest. I heard talk so much this week because of the Brisbane Lions thing with the 8 COVID people out and then another 3 injuries. They had 9 people missing from their starting lineup from the previous round. So it does my head in that you're talking integrity. Stop talking about integrity, because your conference schedule, your home and away season is buggered because there's no integrity, because teams like Geelong have to play a home game at the MCG against Richmond. That is not integrity. That is, I'm going to stop.
All I got to say about that one is the audience, myself included, is extremely lucky this round because we didn't have to wait until halfway into the show for Soapbox Donnie to come out. We got that within the first 20 minutes of this thing, and yeah, I mean, on behalf of Donnie, you guys are welcome because this is one of Donnie's best forms right here.
You got
and one thing that he is one. What do you think I'm gonna do? What do you think I took notes on just now? I took the timestamp of when that happened because that is going everywhere, my friend. Fox Footy is getting added because you have someone that's better than most of the stuff you put out.
I had my fun with Kingy this week too. I was screaming at my iPad. I was screaming at my iPad at first crack because of
here we go.
Of the
Here's our 1 minute anti-Victorian media segment. Or
it's not even
anti-Victorian
media. It's not even anti-Victorian media. It's just media saying stuff and then contradicting themselves. Like They had the discussion on Jake Ginnivan, and Kingy was like, "Well, it's a skill set. It's not a skill set to drop your knees and try to draw a free kick. I mean, it's not a skill set. It's just called not being able to play the game. Like, I understand it's intelligent. I really, really do. But don't complain about the league not doing anything about head injuries, but complimenting a guy for putting himself in an opportunity to get a head injury. Because if you lower your knees and you get slugged in the head." I legitimately agree. They should adjudicate it out of the game. Stop paying it. If he drops to his knees, that's your opportunity lost. You got tackled. That's holding the ball. He'll stop doing it. It'll go out of the game, and you won't have to worry about head injuries. So it's like, All
we're saying is be consistent, and if you're inconsistent, recognize that inconsistency, and then you're all good. You're all pretty much good.
Consistent in your inconsistency.
Hey, that's where I go right there. But in speaking about making bold claims for headlines that the Victorian media does quite often, we're not even getting to that part yet because just wait until we get to our storylines here in a couple seconds when it comes to one Lance Franklin. But we're going to roll on into our overreactions for round 17. For those that don't know how this segment works, I got a few statements for Donnie that I'm going to throw at him, and it's up to him to determine whether or not this is an overreaction or not. Is this an overreaction, or is there actually some truth to this statement? And starting us off, man, let's Are we back on the flag mantle train? I'm kind of confused with this whole hype train because, like, it's like, picking flyers, the loves me not kind of stuff where you just go back and forth the whole time. Every round it feels like flag mantle, no flag mantle, flag mantle, no flag mantle. But apparently this round we're back on flag mantle because statement number 1, Donnie, Fremantle made the biggest statement out of any team this round.
Oh, I absolutely love the Fremantle fans. You guys are absolutely amazing. I love your passion.
I'm not making fun of you guys. I love you. You guys are great.
I really
You're some of my favorites.
Legitimately, I hate these rounds when Sydney plays Fremantle because I have so many great mates that are Fremantle fans, and I respect you. It's absolutely awesome what you guys are doing. It's amazing. But I'm going to say overreaction on this because, honestly, I don't think it was Fremantle because the St. Kilda team has had a lot of questions. They've been inconsistent. They haven't played well. I'm going to go back to kind of the team that I did my soapbox on. It's got to be Geelong. What Geelong did to Melbourne, who, again, many people are still – there are still a lot of people that are on that are saying Melbourne is still going to win the flag. Melbourne, they're getting their malaise of their season out now. And then they'll pick it up and go into the finals. Again, do I fully believe that? We'll have to see. Again, there's still a ton of footy still left to be played. There's still 6 rounds before the finals. But for me, it's Geelong. Because what they did was not something that normally happens. Because most of the wins that happened against Melbourne were without Stephen May. This was with Stephen May in the game and without Tommy Stewart. That's super impressive for me because without your best defender and you really kind of hand Melbourne their behind for a good portion of this game, that for me it's Geelong. Like, again, Fremantle, it's an impressive win over a St. Kilda team, but again, it's an impressive team over a team that might not even play finals this year. So it takes it away a little bit. Now, if St. Kilda is 5th and they do what they did to them, then it's a little more impressive. Then I maybe lean a little bit more. But what Geelong did in a 1 versus 2 matchup, that's impressive. So I'm going to say this is an overreaction for Fremantle because I think Geelong had the best performance of the weekend.
And if there's anyone that's tuning in that's like a couple of the commenters we got over on Instagram, of course, you can find all of our social media at Fourth Along Media on Twitter and Instagram. You can find Coach Johnny over at Coach Has 40 on both platforms as well. He's actually posting, courtesy of me, really. But, I won't take too much credit for you. Really, we have to when it comes to social media, we just have to give your wife all the credit because she is a genius when it comes to this kind of stuff. But, of course... Yeah, there we go. I got you. I love it. I love it. Well deserved one. So we'll give her plenty of praise here. But if you're like a couple of the commenters that took a look at, I put out that post asking who made the biggest statement around. A couple people said Essendon. And obviously, you can break the argument there just because of where they're on the ladder compared to where Brisbane is on the ladder. It's quite the difference. It's quite a steep hike up there. But at the same time, I guess we could give Essendon the credit, not for necessarily what they do on the field, but just because apparently I think Essendon is cursed because every team they've been playing recently is just hit with the most bizarre circumstance and situation when it comes to this, when it comes to performance. They just create the perfect storm to pull a win out of there, what. So we'll give Essendon that credit. I'm necessarily not going to, really go all in that Essendon is back because they also... Maybe some questions about Brisbane as well, because that's somehow apparently worked out great because that's not even intentional, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just that good with my segues. Because statement number 2, guys, Brisbane will not make the top 4.
Oh boy, I love this. I love this question because it does really make you think. Because again, the Brisbane Lions lost really to Essendon. I respect some of the people saying Essendon with a great performance, but again, I hate grain of salting it, and I hate saying it that way, but Brisbane got hammered this week. They had 6 guys out with COVID. They had 3 guys out with injury, so 9 guys that had started the previous game were out of this game. It was nearly a secondary team, and Essendon only won by 10. So playing a secondary team, only winning by 10, I'm not on that bandwagon. Brisbane not making the 4. Well, I don't think this is an overreaction because Brisbane, again, they've done this before. They've had lulls late in the season, and they sometimes go into the finals a little bit. So we'll have to see. And then, just really quickly, I have to look because I have to see who they're playing, and they aren't getting a light schedule to go into the finals. This is their run home. Okay, they get GWS this week, which again I don't think is an easy matchup because if they still have COVID issues, GWS has the talent and the skill to be able to give them headaches. So yeah. I'm gonna say it right now. Keep an eye on this one. This is
they have all the talent skill to give me headaches weekly. So maybe they could do that to Brisbane as well.
It's going to be a theme when we get to tipping that there's several tips that I will honestly say I came close to tipping upsets because there's a lot of games that really scream upset potentially for me. But here's this. After GWS, they get the Gold Coast Suns, which again, not an easy matchup, especially the Richmond Tigers right after that at the MCG, Carlton, St. Kilda, Melbourne. That is their final 5 games of the season. They are not going home in an easy matchup here. So there's a really good possibility, just looking at this schedule, they may not make the 4. So I don't think this is an overreaction at all because their schedule is difficult. They're fighting with COVID right now, and who knows how quickly they'll bounce back from that. Plus, they still got some injuries to key players like Zorko and Rich, who should be back this week. They're still not 100% sure if they both will be back or not. So yeah, I don't think this is an overreaction. I think Brisbane is a little bit kind of teetering on the falling out of the top 4.
Ooh, Lions fans, don't get too nervous because it's obviously I haven't done the full comparison given with ladder spots for the rest of the schedule, but I'm just going to go ahead and take an educated guess that Brisbane has to have one of the toughest ones of any team, especially those last 3 games.
They're fourth, and they're tied with Carlton and Collingwood, and Carlton's one of the teams they have to play. And then you have Sydney at 4, only 1 game back at 40, and then Richmond at 36, who they also have to play. So, and St. Kilda, who they also have to play, is also at 36. So it's not like they're sitting here with an easy run home. And with this really compressed ladder, with 1 through 3 all at 48, 4 through 6 all at 44, 7th at 40, and 8th at 36, there's only a 2-game difference between 1st and 8th. That's it.
You know, I also just love that there's only a 4-game difference between number 1 and number 12. That's really fun right there. I hope, I'll bring back, I guess, apparently a catchphrase. Fingers crossed for chaos at the end of the season, ladies and gentlemen. Especially for all those that are in my boat where your team is nowhere near making the finals, and one of the very few ones that's actually out of finals contention at the moment. Just go ahead, root for me. Hope that everything great and everything bad happens all at the same time, and we just lose our minds, and everyone gets screwed over, and everyone also gets praised. So, I think that would be enjoyable. But that brings us to our last statement, because one of the teams tied, they're just right outside of the ladder, is the Gold Coast Suns. The Gold Coast Suns that just got arguably the biggest win of the entire club's history up to this point. Donnie, let's go. Let's circle the bandwagons. Join me full time and go ahead and agree with the statement, because the Gold Coast Suns are making the finals this year.
Oh boy, that is a call among calls, and again,
I tweeted it, so it's essentially in stone.
I don't know about stone, but we'll definitely have to look at this. So let's just go through it. It is hard not to argue that they have a ton of momentum. They're still a full game back of Richmond, so that's the only thing that concerns me a little bit. But here's their run home. Okay, they got Essendon this week. Again, do we take Essendon with a grain of salt of their win over Brisbane or not? It really kind of depends. Then they get the Q clash with Brisbane, so that's another tough game there at the Gabba. The West Coast Eagles, which this is not the West Coast Eagles of earlier in the year. I think this is a West Coast Eagles team that's playing well. Thankfully, this is at Metricon, so I will give them probably a tick there. And then Hawthorn, Geelong, and the good old North Melbourne Roos to end the season in round 23. I'm circling that North game, because I'm going to sit here and say this right now. I'm going to pull back just really, really quickly from my filters here, because what I want to see is this. I'm going to go to round 23. Okay, because can Gold Coast make it? Here are the matchups just for round 23 as we speak. Brisbane Lions face Melbourne. Carlton faces Collingwood. Essendon faces Richmond. Dockers face Giants. Swans play St. Kilda, and the showdown between Adelaide and Port Adelaide. So if you really look at it, Geelong versus West Coast is the other game. Looking at this here, okay, Sydney's down there with St. Kilda. St. Kilda's but I think St. Kilda with their schedule, I think is be very interesting. The biggest game I think that'll really kind of depend on whether Gold Coast makes is the Essendon Richmond game. Is massive. Because Essendon could play huge spoiler in this, and Carlton and Collingwood, the old rivals, could beat each other, and who knows where Melbourne and Brisbane will be at that time period. I'm very bullish on this Suns team. I really am, because I think they've got all this positive momentum. Stewie Dew is confident. They've got a ton of confidence. You know what? I don't think this is an overreaction. I think the Suns can make the final. Legitimately, yes. The Suns can make the finals.
Yes.
Here's why. Richmond's injuries and their schedule has become much more difficult over these last few rounds than I think they were expecting. Especially this Gold Coast loss, which I think a lot of people would have chalked that up to 4 points a few weeks ago. So Richmond, they're not being handed a lot of easy games after that, because they get North Melbourne this week. I'm going to discuss this game a little bit, because this is a game I've dog-eared, because this one, if I'm a Richmond supporter, is scary, because new coach bounce back, several injuries. Keep an eye on this one. We'll discuss this a little bit more. Doesn't get any easier. You got to play Fremantle, Brisbane, Port Adelaide in 3 consecutive rounds before ending the year with Hawthorn and Essendon.
Yeah, I think the thing with Gold Coast here is that
looking at this, I potentially could see Richmond losing all 3 of those games before those final 2. They may be outside the finals, and Gold Coast or Port may be in. So I don't think this is an overreaction. I think Gold Coast has a really good shot of making the finals because the teams around them have very difficult schedules, and they have a lot of winnable games. They have a couple of difficult games, but they've got a lot more winnable games, almost guaranteed winnable games, than some of the teams around them do.
You know what's really kind of crazy is that if you take at least in my opinion, I don't think it's a crazy statement to say that Gold Coast has the ability to finish off the season 5-1, with one loss being to Geelong, because really the only team that really sticks off, really jumps off the sheet here is going to be the Brisbane Lions, but they've been having some injury issues recently. They've been having some list issues recently, just general performance issues as well. So Gold Coast is no longer outclassed by the Brisbane Lions. I would not be saying that about 6 rounds ago, but I am able to say that now. They're only genuinely outclassed by the Geelong Cats, so I could see a Gold Coast going 4-2. Maybe a 5-1 as well. In Richmond over here, there's a chance that they can end the season on a 3-3 in the 2 or a 2-4 record. Donnie.
And the other thing too with the Geelong game is that's round 22. By then, Geelong may have already solidified themselves a final spot. So and being at Metricon Stadium, don't rule them out either, because Geelong may be smart, instead of putting them into that tropical climate up there, is saving a few superstars, because you still have round 23 at the end of the year. So it'll depend. How does Chris Scott handle it? It also kind of will depend on where's Geelong sitting when it comes to top 4. They're going to want one of those top 2 spots, because then they technically, again, host, air quotes for those listening to the AirPod, major air quotes in that one, host a game in the finals, a potential qualifying to get to the preliminary final at home. So there's still some things to play there for, but potentially you could be sitting into that game with a Geelong team that may come up to Metricon and not want to risk injury, knowing they've still got round 23 to solidify whatever they need. So with that preseason, with that pre-finals bye, it does kind of change. I think it changes round 22 more than round 23, because you may see a round 22 resting to be sure that they're solely ready for that 23, even with a bye week the next week. It'll be fascinating to see. But yeah, I don't think it's an overreaction. I think Gold Coast has a legitimate shot to make finals.
All I'm saying is that Gold Coast is going to finish out the season 6-0 and dance their way into, 7th place on the ladder. And it's going to happen. You guys might as well book it. Put all your money on it. Just kidding. Please don't do that. I will not be held accountable for anyone stupid enough to fully listen to me like that. But one thing you can listen to me with is that Gold Coast is going to make the finals. Go ahead and book it, ladies and gentlemen. But we're not done talking some of these teams, some of these fringe top 8 teams as well, especially one of these finals teams that might be having a bit of an issue when it comes to the future of the club. But that's going to do it for our overreactions for this round. Let us know your thoughts. Do you agree with Coach Junya in any of these? Is Freo, or did Freo make the biggest statement of the round? Is Brisbane going to drop out of the top 4? And are the Gold Coast Suns going to make the finals for the first time in club history? But before we get to what the blank and subsequently Coach Junya's team of the round and our tips for round 18 of the season, we got a couple of things to talk about. First things first, let's talk about the big news coming out of North Melbourne, because they have decided to move on from Davey Noble. David Noble. We'll be formal. Davidson Nobleson is no longer in North Melbourne, is what we can say. Really, this kind of general thoughts about this one kind of caught me by surprise, because almost like what you tweeted to me too, Donnie, is I wasn't expecting them to make this move in season, or especially coming off of the legitimately good performance they had against the Collingwood Magpies. I would think they might might would have extended Noble's tenure at least a little bit longer. But a couple things I have wondering about this one. Is this the right move in your opinion? Where does Clarko fit into all this situation now? And does this give North Melbourne a bit of a increase in odds of retaining Horne Francis? I know. I'm only throwing you softballs. Don't worry about it.
No, they're not softballs. Honestly, these are not easy topics for some people to talk about.
I know. So being sarcastic. I'm sorry that I wasn't.
Let's go right off the top of it. Was it the right move? It depends on who you ask. Legitimately, It depends on who you ask. There are people that are like, "Yep, get rid of him now. You have a chance to start your coaching search now. You can caretaker your coach through the last 6 games of the season. It doesn't matter. You're not going to make the finals. You're most likely going to win the wooden spoon. You're going to get the number 1 overall pick. Yada 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 yada. I 100% understand that. For me, and again, this is not just me in the coaches fraternity. I hate seeing coaches being fired during season because it just is such a rotten feel for that
Sometimes
guy.
It makes sense. Like, I guess Leon Cameron was one of the more justified ones, but most of the time.
But the Leon Cameron one was almost a mutual decision, as much as the club wants you to tell you that this is a mutual decision. This was Noble being sacked and them trying to kind of save face a little bit. Like, because, and I've heard that discussion. Everybody's like, well, if they would have beat Collingwood, they would have survived. From all the information I'm hearing and the podcasts I've listened to, the journalists that I've heard, the insiders that I've heard, I think he was getting fired no matter if they'd have won that Carlton game. He would have been sacked whether they won that Collingwood game or not. Like, that's how crazy this is. They could have beat Collingwood, a team that's most likely going to make the finals, still wouldn't have saved his job, because they're basically saying that the whole debacle in round 3 where he sprayed them viciously and then had to come out and apologize didn't go over well. And that he lost the room, and that's kind of why they had their streak of absolutely atrocious performances. Is Clarko a fit? If you ask most people, it is a perfect fit, because this will solidify Clarko's legacy as a perfect coach if he can come in and make this absolute you-know-what storm into a finals caliber club.
Oh, I thought you were going to say it's because he's going to join them and then lead them to Tasmania.
No. I
don't think that's
as much as some people say, I think the movement of North Melbourne to Tasmania is just not going to happen. I don't want to talk about it because I don't think it's going to happen. There's too much connections to the northern part of Melbourne. I just don't see it happening. As much as Eddie Maguire wants the 11-11, whatever, I'm not going to go into that, because it's another one of Eddie's great ideas that just seems like a way for him to kind of get his way that really has very little positive in the long run, in my opinion. So we'll stay there. Clarko fit, yes. Clarko want to be at North Melbourne? Everything I'm hearing, no. He does not want to go anywhere near that job. Nowhere near that job.
Yes.
So then there's talk of the West Coast Eagles coach, because he's a former North Melbourne player. Well, West Coast has got to fire him, or he's not going anywhere. So I think West Coast has bounced back enough. I don't think it's going to happen. The Ross Lyon, the former St. Kilda and Freo coach, as much as I would love for him to take that job, because I think he's such a great coach. He's got such a great. I think the way the club is run is the reason why Ross will not take that job. And then I'm hearing
you're right.
I
won't be taking that job.
Well, and I've heard of all sorts of assistant coaches. I've heard all sorts of assistant coaches. I've heard all sorts of assistant coaches being thrown out. And the one that irritates me the most, and it's not because he's a Swan, it's because everything that I've heard, people are throwing his name out, but he's already basically said he doesn't want it, and that's Don Pike from the Sydney Swans, who's a former Adelaide Crows coach. They interviewed him on Triple M for their Friday rub, and they asked him, with North Melbourne having all the issues, would you be interested? And he basically said no. He basically said, I'm happy where I'm at. I like what I'm doing at Sydney. I like working with John Longmire. Why would I leave? Like, legitimately said that. But I'm still hearing people say his name in the coach, and I'm like, unless they're going to throw $3 million in cash at him, I just don't see Don Pike leaving the Swans. And again, this is not red hat Donnie. This is coaching. This is coach neutral Donnie here. I don't see the merit of him leaving a club that is literally barreling towards a finals, towards a flag type of group where why would he go to a team? It's going to take at least 2 years to get them into finals contention. Do they have a ton of talent? Yes, I believe North Melbourne has much more of a talented list than people give them credit for. They've got a lot of under 24-year-olds that are super talented. They're just undisciplined, very structurally not sound, and they have not played footy very well. They've got a ton of great talent. Then we'll go to the blue whale that is Jason Horne-Francis. Unfortunately, I think the club has been the one that has burned him. That I think as soon as he can, I think he's going to go back to South Australia if they can get it figured out. This off-season, I honestly think, legitimately keep an eye on this trade period. This trade period could be bonkers because I'm hearing Grundy out of Collingwood, potentially in a trade to GWS, or potentially back to South Australia with Port Adelaide or Adelaide. Taranto most likely to Collingwood. To go somewhere. We still don't know. The next topic we'll discuss here in a little bit potentially could happen, which could make the off season even more entertaining, shall we say? Josh Dunkley of the Western Bulldogs. There are a ton of guys that potentially could be on the move, and some cachet in some of these moves that I'm intrigued for the off season once the season's over with, because there could be fireworks when it comes to trades, when it comes to moves, and when it comes to relocations, because there's going to be I think a lot of moves this year. Last year was Adam Chera was really the only one everybody was talking about, and the rest were kind of iffy moves. This season could have some absolute, just mind-blowingly big potential moves that could happen this offseason with all of the things that have changed over these last 6 months. It's going to be fascinating. But yeah, Jason Horne-Francis potentially finds his way back to South Australia. My gut tells me I'm leaning more towards that potentially happening, just because I think it's the club that's burned him more than the playing group and the coaching. I think the club, how they handled him going back to South Australia and not telling them, the list that he's got around him is very fragile. It's very there's no cohesion. Is that a coaching? Yes, that's a coaching situation. So will I negative Noble on that? Yeah, but I don't know. I have a hard time seeing Francis want to stay. Horne-Francis want to stay there, unless significant leaps in improvement happened over these last 6 weeks, even under a caretaker.
Absolutely. And I mean, when it comes to the whole Jason Horne-Francis kind of situation, I really think that the ship on him return to North Melbourne probably sailed, I don't know, maybe a month ago, at least, because even at that point, it looked almost like we're at the point of no return with him in the club. It just, nothing is great, and this is not, like, kind of like you're alluding to, there's going to need to be drastic change made in order to sway Horne-Francis a little bit, and just changing your coach, especially about who they get, not going to do it with him. And I really don't blame him, because he does not look happy at all. Obviously we could have an entire hour-long show about, the drama with Jason Horne-Francis, if it's his fault, if it's the club's fault, and, all that in between. We're not going to, because we have better things to talk about. But of course, this is going to be interesting. I don't think North is going to be poaching Clarko away from the almighty GWS Giants, luckily. So I'm not too worried with them. So I think every team's still in a pretty good spot here. I just feel bad for Noble, because he wasn't the. I mean, okay, let's be real. He wasn't the greatest coach. He didn't have the greatest tenure with North Melbourne, but also let's not act like it was all his fault, because it clearly was not. But speaking about something that could be all the fault of a club, let's talk about this story, Donnie, in one where we're going to take it as face value. This is 100% correct. There is no need to kind of disagree on the sources who wrote the article, because we all know they are known for producing nothing but super accurate and well-purported journalism. And of course, I'm talking about the amazing, astounding Herald Sun, who we all know and love as the most reliable piece of media that the world has ever seen. And if you could say that without laughing, I applaud you, because I could not. But we are taking a look at, possibly according to them, that Buddy Franklin is entering some new drama with his contract, and that he's going to potentially be quitting the Swans due to a lowball offer that was just put on the table by the club. Of course, Donnie, I'm sure you have plenty of thoughts on this one, plenty of grains of salt we're going to need to take with this story. So is Dusty going to be out of Sydney? Is Sydney going to give Dusty the money that he wants? And are we going to essentially see Dustin Martin replace Buddy Franklin with the Sydney Swans? Answer all those amazing questions. I'm sure it's super easy to solve.
Okay. Oh man. So waking up this morning, the one and only bad part about being an American when it comes to keeping track of the
a little behind on the news, aren't we?
Sometimes in Australia is that sometimes bat crazy stuff happens while you're asleep. So I wake up to a couple of not only Facebook posts but also Twitter messages and things like that saying,
of course,
OMG, the Sydney Herald is putting out that there have been bumps in the road in the negotiations, and that supposedly Buddy has been quoted again. I take that with a massive grain of salt that Buddy would be dumb enough to say that into the media, which I don't think he did. That he's being lowballed by the Swans at $500,000 a year. Okay. For those that live in Australia that watch this, Ross, you've seen the NFL, you've seen the NHL. When a guy gets towards the end of his career, is he going to make the top tier figures when it comes to finances?
Oh, yeah, why wouldn't he, Donnie? No, of course not.
So here is my argument. And again, this is a couple of Americans talking sports, but talking a little bit. So it's a completely different financial situation. But a $10 million player over here, when they get towards the end of their career, they're going to sign something for a third of that price. Currently, Buddy is on about 1.4 million. A third of that, considering he's 32, he's had injury-plagued seasons, he's had many an injury, he's towards the end of his career. A third of his salary is $500,000, $500,000. It's not bad money. I mean, especially for the AFL, that's still pretty good money. Is this a lowball offer? No, legitimately, I do not think it's a lowball offer. And okay,
it's a very reasonable one, right?
And I'm gonna say this. Okay, I'm gonna take off neutral hat, and I'm gonna put on Swan's red hat here. This is purely my opinion on this. Okay, purely my opinion. Does Buddy Franklin deserve $500,000? That is the most I would pay him. This is legitimately me. $500,000, maybe $6,000 would be the most I would pay him. Because
it's going back to having to pay every one of those super young. This is loaded. This roster is loaded with young talent that you're going to have to keep around for years.
And many
like you've talked about, and especially in the games that. Sorry, I'm going to keep interrupting you because that's one thing I'm good at. One thing that we saw earlier in the season, especially in the Buddyless games that we saw, is that Sydney. It might be a tough thing to say. I almost bring this back to in your situation, Donnie, with Buddy and the Swans. I'm going to relate to my big thing, and for everyone following Gridiron, Von Miller and the Broncos kind of situation, where last year they traded him away, one of the greatest players in franchise history. They trade away. Essentially, they let him leave the team because. And honestly, it might be a worse situation, but essentially it's a guy that the Broncos, and given their situation, they didn't necessarily need. He wasn't necessarily worth the costs that came alongside it. Obviously, it's a guy you would love to have on your list, but if push comes to shove, you're going to take the you're going to make that move and bring and so you could keep the younger guys going. Is that pretty similar to this situation as well, Donnie?
No, pretty much. And my favorite part is that everybody's trying to twist this. Well, they're trying to lowball Buddy so they can bring in Dusty Martin. Well, here's a reality check. I've heard Tom Harley, the CEO of the Sydney Swans, already basically say the Dusty Martin discussions are a waste of our time. They don't have the salary cap. They're not interested in him. They have the midfield youth depth they need. Mm-hmm. Would they like Dusty Martin? I don't think any person worth their weight in gold would say they don't want Dusty Martin. But
exactly,
you don't want Dusty Martin in the process of costing you a Rowbottom, a Warner, an Ollie Florent, a McInerney, a Blakey.
You're not going to bend over backwards to keep him on your list.
Exactly. And then there's people like, well, if you could sign Buddy, you could bring Buddy and Dusty. I'm like, yeah, and then lose 6 youngsters because $2.5 million is on 2 guys that maybe have 3 years combined left in their careers. Like, again, are they great players? Yes. Do I look at it. The Sydney Herald is not exactly known for its footy coverage, so I think
really?
this is
crazy.
I think this is somebody got a sniff of that they weren't close, that they're still negotiating, so they decided to make a story about this.
Just fill in the dots with whoever they want to.
I agree with several that I said is that if Buddy signs a new contract extension tomorrow morning, it's going to make whoever wrote this article look really, really, really stupid. So I think it's going to get done. Will the Swans cave a little? It won't shock me because I think they think he needs to be there because of the star power. Okay, legitimately think that. Mm-hmm. But as I've said, and again, I'm not trying to be cruel to Buddy. Buddy's one of my favorite players. I will openly say that. Again, Red Hat Donnie here. Buddy is one of my favorite players of all time. I love the way the guy plays. But I've said it, and I will say it, and I don't care who in the Swans I offend. 600,000, no higher, because you were costing your future to keep a guy that really I think has 2 great seasons left in him, and that's it. I would let Buddy go, and I know it sounds shocking. Coach Hess wants Buddy. No, I don't want Buddy to leave, but if Buddy leaves, to keep a Warner, a Rowbottom, a McInerney, a Blakey, a Heaney, a Wicks, these youngsters that have 7, 8, 10, 12 years left in their footy careers, I'm willing to do that for a guy that maybe only has 2. So, again, I take it with a grain of salt. I think it'll happen, but I don't think the Swans are going to overpay for him. They're basically going to tell Buddy, hey, if you want to be part of this team to potentially have a chance to win a flag in Sydney, you're going to have to give a little too. We're going to give a little.
I agree.
We'll give you a little bit more money, 600,000. I think if you start getting to the 7s and the 8s, it's too much money. You're spending.
I think the Swans have been playing this really well in terms of not like feeding into the almost what you feel like maybe a little bit of fan pressure. They're playing it smart, and they're just seeing the truth is what's out there, and they're not trying to bend over backwards for a star. They're trying to respect him. I'm sure they're not going to do anything disrespectful to Buddy, but at the same time, they're being realistic with their club, and that's really what you hope that they can do.
Well, you can't sit there and focus primarily on one season or within a season. You have to have a holistic look because the club has got to think about not just this season, not just next season, but 2, 3, 4 seasons in advance, because you've got a list that, like I said, if you can keep it together, you can keep it healthy, is a flag contender type of list for the next 8 to 10 years if they can keep the youth that they have drafted and that they have molded on the list. And it's not just, and I know there's going to be people in the comment section, well, they get all those academy players. Again, reality check to you. There have only been 12 academy players that have played senior footy. Not all of them with the Swans. And guess how many Swans Academy players have went through the academy? That would be 2,500. I don't know about you, but 12 out of 2,500 is kind of a small number. So this argument that Sydney has this great advantage, No, they don't. They just produce really good footy players in a rugby state that, again, sorry to you Victorians who don't understand this, if they didn't play footy, they'd be playing rugby. I don't know. Maybe I hate saying it this way, but I'm going to be quite simple. Isaac Heaney could have played rugby league. Callum Mills could have played rugby league. I'm sorry. They're playing footy because the Swans have a very good academy. They develop them well. They get first rights to them. It's like your father's sons. Look at the Western Bulldogs. Look at the Collingwood Magpies. You guys are getting a lot of father sons that are conveniently at the top of the draft pool. So you're saying Sydney's got an advantage, but yet Collingwood has the number 1 overall kid this last year, but yet they didn't finish last. So, again, think about what hill you want to die on, ladies and gentlemen, because that's a hill. I think you're dying on it for the wrong reason. That's what we'll say there. So, I think Buddy will sign. I think this is a hill of beans. I think this is a waste of time. This is a BS article. I think it'll eventually happen, but it causes clicks, so we got to do it.
Fair enough. But to sum up this segment, Coach Donnie thinks that the North Melbourne Roos are going to move heaven and earth to keep Jason Horne-Francis, and he also has told Buddy Franklin to kick rocks, essentially, and he is washed. Of course, I am applying for my job with the Herald within the next couple days, and I will be using that clip as evidence of why I will be perfect for that team. But, ladies and gentlemen, before we get to our tips and Donnie's team of the round, we got a little fun one for you guys. Because we have, I think there's a lot of ways that Coach Donnie could take these statements with this next segment. Because of course, it's time for What the Blank. The segment where Coach Donnie fills in the blanks with whatever he so blankin' chooses. Of course, for those who don't know how this segment works, I got 3 statements for Coach Donnie, and there's a blank at either the beginning, middle, or the end of it, and it's up to him to fill it in with whatever he so chooses. Of course, drop your thoughts on this in the comments below. What would you fill in the blank? Let us know in the comments, or hit us up over on socials at Coach Has 40 on both Instagram and Twitter, and Fourth and Long Media on both Instagram and Twitter as well. But Donnie, first off, statement number 1, you might have gotten a little bit of help considering, you have your bifocals there, great stuff. But even they could not save you from some of the stuff that took place this round. So with that being said, statement number 1, blank hurt my eyes the most this round.
Oh boy. I thought about this a little bit, and to my beloved host, I do apologize for this. The GWS Giants performance against Port Adelaide hurt my eyes because, and I kid you not, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that watched it, they kicked a grand total of 3 goals in an entire game of footy. They kicked 3 goals. One in the first quarter, one in the second quarter, one in the third quarter, and none in the fourth quarter. I'm as talented as this GWS team is, that hurt watching that game, especially considering the way Port Adelaide played, considering they took GWS to the woodshed, and the scary part about it is that it could have been worse because Port Adelaide kicked 12 behinds in this game. They kicked 12-84.
Tell me, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's bad when your behind totals are almost matching your goal totals in terms of points.
Mm-hmm. Yep, 3-11. They were 1-4 in the first quarter. They had 1 goal in the entire second quarter. That was it. They were 2-4. After halftime, they kicked 1-5. And after going into the fourth quarter, they kicked 0-2.
I just think you're lucky, Donnie. This game hurt your eyes. This game hurt my eyes, my brain, and my soul. So you're able to avoid 2 of those 3.
I felt so horrible because, and again, this is a Port Adelaide team. I've said it numerous times. I said,
they're a good team, but the GWS Giants are horrible.
their record does not depict how good they are. They're so much a better team. It's that 0-5 start just really put them in such a hole that they're having to dig themselves out. If they didn't have that 0-5 start, I think they're in the 8, and Richmond is out. That's how big that start killed them so much. So,
I mean, take away the 0-5, they're an 8-3 club, which is would be it's a pretty solid winning percentage right there. That's for damn sure. But moving away from this disaster of a game, this embarrassment, and quite honestly, this the disrespect to the game of footy that we all know and love. Let's move away from the GWS Giants because favorite number 2. They're definitely not going to be getting anywhere near this one because the Redemption Award goes to blank for their performance in round 17. Now, keep in mind, this could be a player, this could be a team, this could be a coach, this could be, once again, anything you want to fill in the blank with.
I'm kind of wrap it up a little bit. Again, this is somebody's going to say, "Oh, this is a homer pick." This isn't a homer pick, and that's Sydney over the Western Bulldogs because the atrocious performance against Essendon, again, all the negative. They're going to fall out of the finals. Them and St Kilda are both going to fall at the last leg, and they're not going to make the finals. And they again kind of handed the doggies their rear end on a silver platter. And probably the performance I think that surprised me the most was Tommy Papley. I mean, for a forward, I mean, the guy had an incredible game. It was absolutely insane. The statistics.
Are we getting a spoiler for part of the team of the round?
Maybe just the tiniest bit. We'll have to see. We'll throw it in there a little bit. But I got to pull up his line because his line is ridiculous. Okay, he had 24 disposals, but listen to this: he had 5 goal assists and 17 score involvements. That is the most in the entire AFL this entire season. 17 score involvements. 17. And the crazy part is he kicked 2-5. 2 goals, 5 behinds. So he could have had even more points and made even a bigger impact on this game if he would have scored the Giants. So I would say my redemption story is the Swans and the Tommy Papley, because the previous round against Essendon, he kicked atrociously. I think he was 0-5 in that game, and even had a kick out on the full. So it was just such an interesting bounce back because he did. Yeah, okay. He was 1-3 against Essendon. I forgot he did kick a goal late, but he had also
still bad though.
He had one out on the full. Yeah, so it was a redemption game, I think, for both of them, because I think Papley redeemed kind of a bad performance where I think a lot of Swans fans goes, if he kicks a couple of those goals, they beat Essendon. For him to bounce back and just make such an impact, because he even went into the midfield and had so many, when he got a hold of the footy, something happened. So it was a dynamic game for little Tommy Papley, the old plumber. So Sydney and Tommy Papley for me would be the redemptions, because of kind of how horrible the previous round against Essendon went, and then how well they did in the game against the Western Bulldogs.
Absolutely. I think that's a perfect nomination for a team right there, an even better one when it comes to individual player themselves. But capping us off for what the blank this round is, segment number 3, Donnie. I feel blank when looking at the ladder heading into round 18.
I love this question. When you sent me the sheet, I looked at it and I went, man, there's several ways I can go. I'm gonna kind of go.
Do you need the full dictionary?
I am fascinated by this ladder, because again, as I said, 1 through 3 on the ladder are all tied at 48. 4 through 6 are all at 44. And then Sydney at 40 at 7. So your top 7 teams, there's only a 2-game difference. And you have a fact that, as we kind of stated earlier, Brisbane is in 4th. But with 1 loss or a negative percentage situation, they could be down all the way to 6th. They could go from top 4 to an elimination final position in one day. So this is fascinating, because I think, as I stated a couple rounds ago, and I agree with this is going to come down to the final day, final game, before we know who's playing who. I don't think we're going to sit here going like we did previous years where we're like, okay, 1 verse 4, 2 verse 3 is set. The only thing we don't know is 6, 7, and 8, maybe. This is a year, if things happen the way they could, 1 through 8 are still up for grabs. Like, you don't know who could be where. Like, we could go Geelong, Melbourne, Fremantle, or 1 through 3. In 2 rounds, it could be Fremantle, Geelong, Melbourne. I mean, it could even be Fremantle, Brisbane, Carlton, Melbourne. Like, that's how crazy this could be just because of the 1 game difference. So I'm fascinated by this because I think this thing is going to play leapfrog with itself. And the live ladders are going to be fascinating on the coverages. Like, I love when they do that because they showed one
They're going to be... I feel bad for the graphics people because those things are going to be changing every second.
Well, every goal could change just because of percentage. They showed one...
I'm not even, like, joking with that, Donnie. I legit think it's going to be constantly changing with every goal. It's so much fun.
If you think this week's interesting, watch the Western Bulldogs St. Kilda game. Because you know that graphic's going to come up every time every time the lead changes, that graphic's going to come up, and you're going to see a point where one of them jumps into the 8 and then the other one drops down to 10th, and then it's going to flip so many times. Like, these teams are going to jump each other so much on the live ladder due to the score. It's going to be absolutely fascinating to watch. And that's the 10 versus 9 game. That's before Richmond even plays. And then you've still got Gold Coast, Port Adelaide, and all those teams still around them. So these rounds are going to be, like, I don't know if I'm going to get much sleep over the last 2 or 3 rounds because I'm almost going to want to stay up to watch the games because it's going to be fascinating just seeing how this affects the ladder. Like, each round is going to be, this ladder is going to do a facelift a couple of times because I don't think we're even close to where it's going to end. Do I think that most of the 8 teams that are in it are going to make finals? Yes. It's what position? I have no clue. Because
I think 7 of the 8 are finals teams, but like you said, I have no idea where the hell anyone is going to end up here. We're going to see, I don't know, we might even see, Donnie, we're going to see Gold Coast end up as the top seed on the ladder, win the minor premiership, and
I don't know if that's going to happen because that's 16 games.
Okay, might be a little bit of a stretch.
And there's only 6 games left, so I don't think
exactly.
I don't think Melbourne, Geelong, and Fremantle are all going to lose all 6 games.
Well, I just don't think you know footy then, Donnie. Unbelievable.
That's a bold call there, sir. That's a bold call.
Oh, yeah, no, now I'm just getting from being joking and sarcastic just to being a dick. But, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for our What the Blank segment of the round. What made your eyes hurt the most this weekend? Who gets the redemption award for their performance this round? And how do you feel when you take a look at the ladder heading into round 18? But before we cap things off with our tips, it's time for the best list from sea to sea, from landmass to landmass. I've been doing this for every week, and I still can't really get my head around what the hell I'm going to say. It's the best list in the world. Donnie, take it away. Team of the round.
Oh boy, so a very interesting round for me here, just because there were a lot of great performances, a lot of things, and so let's jump right into it. Team of the round, round 17. Always start in the defense. Mr. Automatic that's come in for Geelong, it really made an impact. Tommy Atkins has played absolutely fantastic for them. Big shout out. I love seeing this guy on there because it's a redemption story that I love. That's Sydney's Paddy McCartan coming in, leading the league in intercept marks this season. Absolutely fantastic for Paddy to get the recognition that he deserves. Gold Coast Jack Bowes. Again, Gold Coast just playing out of their skin right now. Absolutely fantastic for the Coast. St. Kilda's Jack Sinclair, the do-everything halfback for the Saints. Again, continuing to play really good footy. Brisbane's Brandon Starcevich. Again, you got to play big time with some of the losses that they had, losing Rich and losing some of their backlines. And the other great story this year, Carlton's Sam Dougherty, again, continuing another absolutely fantastic season. The fact that he's in discussions for All-Australian is absolutely fantastic after coming back from the testicular cancer that he had. We jump to the ruck. I gotta give it. He made the bench last week, but I'm going to give it to him. He's going to start this week, and that's the rucks. Frios, Sean Darcy, again, playing out so well for him. Another great season for the big ruckman from the Fremantle Dockers. We jump to the midfield. The first two were in the first game. Geelong's Cameron Guthrie and Melbourne's Christian Petrarca. Again, both had incredible games in this game, both everywhere on the field. It's hard not to say that they don't deserve to be on here. This guy is coming out of his skin. In fact, Damien Barrett on one of the shows even said he thinks this guy can win a Brownlow medal in the next couple of years, and that's Sydney's Chad Warner. Again, another great performance, puts another couple of goals in, and again, is making a massive impact in the midfield for the Swannies. You kick a game winner, you gotta be in the team of the week, and that's Gold Coast Noah Anderson.
There we go, baby.
My hat tip to you, Mr. Noah Anderson, and I'll tell you this little story. In an under-13s game, he had a shot from basically the similar angle and missed it. So he had that running through his head, and the fact that most people did know this, Noah Anderson was a Richmond Tigers supporter as a kid. So the fact that the winner that he got is over the Richmond Tigers is absolutely fantastic. And the last midfielder, again, playing such a great season, showing why he's an incredible talent, and that's Shai Bolton of the Richmond Tigers. Again, another fantastic game for him. In just falling a little bit short for the Richmond Tigers, but again, another great performance. Forward, North gets a guy in the team of the week. You got to celebrate your little victories, and that's North's Nick Larkey. Again, kicking a lot of goals, being an absolute nightmare for that Collingwood defense without some of their top guys there. So Port Adelaide's Connor Rosie, he's played a lot more in the midfield this year, but he had a game of games against GWS. In fact, I hate saying this, but he kicked more goals than GWS did. He kicked 4. So,
Donnie, that's not saying anything. I think my fiance's dying dog probably could have kicked as many goals.
Sorry about that. We jumped to it. Essendon's 2-meter Peter Wright, again, having another great game for the Bombers. Hawthorn's Mitch Lewis, again. Hawthorn with a dynamite performance over the Adelaide Crows, getting a big one. And the last two are both from Carlton, because Carlton's two big forwards kicked 10 goals, 6 in this game, with Harry Mackay and Charlie Curnow both kicking 5 in the ending game. We jumped to
Curnow, I think he still has a couple goals on Jeremy Cameron for
Yep, he's got Coleman, a really good chance of winning the Coleman. So we jump to the bench defense. Richmond's Daniel Rioli, again, he's found a renaissance down in that halfback line, is playing out of his skin, absolutely fantastic. Fremantle's Will Brodie, again, having a great season. The trade receipt, the guy from the Gold Coast coming out to Freo, has played such great footy. Another great addition to that Fremantle squad. Ruck, again, another North player. Isn't that crazy? 2 North players make the team of the week, and that's Todd Goldstein. Absolutely toweled up Cameron and Cox in that game. Really was one of the reasons why North was really, really close to getting a win there. And yes, I kind of tipped my hand a little bit. Forward, Sydney's Tom Papley. I had a choice between him and Isaac Heaney. I had to give Pappers because when you get 17 score involvements and 5 goal assists and 24 touches and an absolutely incredible game. Yes, he didn't kick as many goals with only 2, but I got to give that young man some credit. So I'm going to throw him in as the bench forward for my team of the week. And that's Coach Hess's team of the round for round 17.
And of course, still the greatest list you will ever see, especially compared to Victorian media and anything that will come from the almighty Herald. But let's cap things off, ladies and gentlemen. We've been rambling long enough, and it's time to get you the information you need to know heading into round 18 of the AFL season, because we're going to throw on over to our tips for the round. And like Daniel was saying, well, maybe he wasn't necessarily saying this, but I'll say this. I am extremely worried when it comes to my tips for this round, because I'm either going to look like a genius, I'm going to look like a moron. I have no idea how most of these games are going to go. So we're going to see, Donnie. I'm going to put my hands up and just say we are going to see, because even kicking us off for the first game of the round, no Thursday night footy this week for us, but we'll kick things off in Marvel Stadium on Friday, because we got the Doggies taking on the St. Kilda Saints. We got a team that's been underperforming this year against a team that has been extremely inconsistent this year. I think the Doggies are going to suck less, and so I'll ride with them. Honestly, this game could really go either way, and I wouldn't be surprised in the least.
This is one of those. I had several this week that I bounced back and forth with a lot. I'm with you on this one. I have the Western Bulldogs, but mainly because I think Bailey Smith's return this week, I think is going to be massive. He comes into a section of the ground that I think they've had their struggles a little bit over these weeks without him. So I think he steps in. I think he kind of solidifies the Western Bulldogs midfield. I think English kind of learned a little bit with his lackluster performance against a ruckless there for a bit, Sydney Swans, where they had to bring in a secondary forward, and surprisingly, the secondary forward actually did really well against English. So I think Naughton may have himself a great game. St Kilda after Max King, after the King, there's not as dangerous a forward line, so I don't think Western Bulldogs will get as exposed as they did, say, against Sydney, where you had several really good forwards that just caused them headache after headache after headache. So I'm going to go with the Western Bulldogs, but I am not super confident in this one because neither team has really inspired a lot of trust, shall we say, this season.
That's a good point. One of the few games I'm actually semi-confident in is this next one between the Collingwood Magpies and the Adelaide Crows. Even though this is taking place at the Oval, I still think that Collingwood they've been one of the hottest teams in the league, only up there with Geelong. Yeah, it was a close game against North. I don't necessarily think that will happen in back-to-back games when you got the greatest player in American history playing in Australia, especially the greatest Australian-American player of all time, Mason Cox. We love Big Cox over here at 4th and Long. Maybe not Donnie. I don't need to group him in there, but I know for a fact, you guys know for a fact that your boy loves Big Cox. And I think the Collingwood Magpies are going to take this one.
Oh, it's going to
be horrible if someone takes a show out of context.
Exactly. This morning I tweeted something that somebody put. You might want to change that, and I go, yeah. If somebody sees that out of context, probably. Well, I was saying how I thought Buddy Franklin likes playing with the younger players, and I said he likes playing with younger. Yeah, and so I won't even
we're
finish
running
that,
into a bit of a Penn State issue, aren't we? Let's not go
there. When it comes to it, I don't think I'm tipping Collingwood in this one, but this is one of several games that I'm sitting there going, I thought about for a bit, because this is a danger game. This is a trap game because they stumbled against North Melbourne. They found a way to do it, but Adelaide is a much, much more difficult opponent, and it's at Adelaide. It's at the Adelaide Oval. The Crows play well at home. Collingwood sometimes stumbles a little bit on the road, so I keep an eye on this one. This is one of an upset potential. I'm looking at. There's several that I've dog-eared a lot because I think this could be a round that could see a ton of upsets if the right things happen. I'm going to tip Collingwood, but it will not shock me if the Crows find a way to nip this because this Collingwood team has been playing with fire a little bit with some of these teams. So keep an eye on this one. I got the Pies, but keep an eye on the Crows on this one.
Now, Donnie, before the show was giving me a little bit of hope when I didn't think there was going to be anything, and I'm still really not that all confident in this next one because the GWS Giants are taking on the Brisbane Lions. Even though the Lions may have stumbled a little bit over the last handful of rounds, I still don't think they are bad enough to lose to the Giants. I'll take Brisbane.
I'm going to take Brisbane in this one, but what scares me about this game is we don't know how the players that are out with COVID, how they will respond. We don't know if Rich is back. We don't know if Zorko's back. Teams aren't announced until Friday. So again, this tip is rather early a little bit because we don't know the teams. Because Oscar McInerney, we know, is out. He's just went into COVID protocol, so it's at least a week from now, which means he will miss this game. Which means GWS right now goes up against Darcy Fort. So that already gives GWS a little bit of an advantage in the ruck contest, which then usually means your midfield usually will get a little bit more of the footy. GWS has a midfield with the talent that if they can get it to Jesse Hogan, if they can get it to their forwards, they can kick goals. I'm going to tip Brisbane, but this is another one I thought about tipping GWS because I think this is another, kind of like Collingwood, this is a recipe for disaster. Not playing well, injuries and COVID issues, and a GWS team that when they play on their day can be very, very dangerous. Brisbane, but will not shock me if GWS wins this one as well.
Now, with this next game, I might have to get hate. I might be called stupid by a couple of our fans because, that's very well deserved. It might not just be because of this tip. It also could be for a plethora of other reasons. You can call me that. But the next game we're taking a look at, heading back to Marvel Stadium, we got the North Melbourne Roos taking on the Richmond Tigers. And yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen, this is my pick for the bold tip of the round. We got a $6.70 underdog taking on the Richmond Tigers, a Tigers team that's been depleted through injuries. There's been question marks around this whole roster, especially with around the little Dusty Martin situation as well. North Melbourne pushed Collingwood to the brinks and really probably should have won that game if we're being honest with ourselves. They're only giving a 4% chance from the tipsters on the AFL.com website, but I am a part of that 4%. The Roos are taking home the win this round, Donnie. Tell me why I'm wrong.
I'm not going to say you're wrong because I think this could be a perfect storm for North Melbourne. This is legitimately a perfect storm because almost always you get a new coach bounce. You're going to get a good performance for the new coach. I don't know why that is, but it happens.
It's just tradition at this point. We have to accept it.
Then you throw in the fact that Richmond could be without Tommy Lynch, Ivan Saldo, and Toby Ninkurvis. Cochin still may not be back. That is no rucks and no super big forward. So this is a combination that could be absolute disaster. I'm still going to tip Richmond because I think Richmond has just enough talent and just enough people in the right places. I think they'll be able to overcome their disadvantages again in the ruck. And then I think going forward, I think they're going to take a little bit of a hit. Lynch has been kind of a, pardon the pun, Lynch pin for that forward line a little bit. So I'm going to tip Richmond in this one, but I am not going to be shocked at all if North pulls the win because this is a perfect storm for the Roos to be able to get another win on the board.
Next one, we actually have the Geelong Cats playing an away game at the MCG. Shocker, I know. They're taking on the Carlton Blues, and the Blues are good, but I'm not tipping against the best team in footy right now.
This is another one. Could we see a perfect storm? Could Geelong coming off that big win over Melbourne be a little bit vulnerable? Carlton is absolutely hot as a firecracker. They're starting to get healthy. They're starting to play better footy. I just think Geelong's experience, their talent, and their skill will be able to overcome the kind of brutality that is the Carlton team when they get going. I think Geelong is wise enough. They'll be able to handle it. They're not going to get over panicked. I think Geelong wins this one, but this is a cracker. This is an absolutely fantastic game. It just irritates the snot out of me that this game and the next game are basically on at the same time, which really infuriates me.
You mean a game that you have extremely heavy amounts of investment in, given that it's a Fremantle Dockers taking on the Sydney Swans? Crazy. Crazy. I'm sorry, Donnie. I'm sorry, Swans fans. But shout out to Flagmantle because I'm riding with you boys this weekend. Hell yeah, let's go Freo, because it's kind of hard because Fremantle might well just be the better team than Sydney. It also doesn't help that you're heading into the prison known as Optus Stadium, and Fremantle doesn't do a whole lot of losing there, especially this season.
Oh boy, this is one of those. I thought about it and I thought, can Sydney pull the upset? And I think, I honestly, I believe they can. I'm going to tip against it, and again, I'll play both sides. I play both sides of the coin here a little bit when it comes to my tipping because I do this a lot. If I'm pretty darn sure that talent-wise, it's even. I think this is an even game talent-wise. I think it's going to come down to intangibles, effort, pressure, goal accuracy. And I think Optus Stadium, Fremantle, much more used to the confines. Sydney has played Optus pretty well. So I think this is a close game. I think Fremantle wins this, but I think this potentially could be game of the round because I think this comes down late in this one. I just hope it's not another Nat 5 kicking a goal late to burn us again, potentially, which has happened before. Again, Fremantle fans, I'm tipping you because I just think there's just a little too much there. But again, I will be barracking for Sydney. Again, it's a no lose situation. Sydney wins, I'm happy, even though I missed the tip. If I get the tip right, well, I get the tip right. So
exactly. So I mean, you
play both sides of the fence
top
here a little bit.
Oh, you cheater! But it's okay. We still love you. This next one, I really could overthink this and say that West Coast is going to win, but I'm also just not going to overthink this one. Say that Hawthorn is a good enough team to not lose to the West Coast. Even though, like I said, West Coast is a better team, different team.
It's not overthinking in some situations because they have gotten a lot of that skill and talent back. But it's the fact that if this was an Optus Stadium, I probably would tip West Coast legitimately because I think being at home, they play much better. On the road, they get the yips. Even as talented as this team is, even when they were full strength, they get the yips going on the road. They just don't like Marvel. They don't like coming east. They don't like playing at Melbourne Cricket Ground. Hawthorn plays it well. I think what Sam Mitchell is doing, it has a lot of positive merit. As the win-loss record may not be great, but I think there's a lot of development in some of this young talent. And I think we kind of see the future of this young Hawthorn team continue to grow. West Coast, again, they're out of it. They don't like to travel. They kind of start whinging whenever they have to travel sometimes over the east. So I'm going to tip Hawthorn in this one. But again, like a couple of them, this, again, has the possibility that West Coast could go in and get a win because with their talent back, they have the talent to be in this game.
And second to last game we got going on this round is some updated news for Donnie, just in case you have not seen this one. Clayton Oliver will not be suiting up this round to take on the Port Adelaide
he has a fracture in his thumb.
Yeah. Melbourne's going to play it safe, and
which is really smart. They're going to make,
but now it's
finals.
Official.
Why waste? I kind of knew he wouldn't. There are people talking.
Well, it's official,
about
so I'm still breaking news. I'm still important.
It's official from the club, but I think it was pretty much.
But this is a really interesting game, Donnie, because I had some thoughts going into this one. You really swayed me before we started recording. Melbourne is, about $1 favorite. About 93% of the tipsters are going with them. But Port Adelaide has an incredible chance to win this game. I will go with the D's, but I'm not feeling 100% confident in that pick by any stretch of the imagination.
Oh, this is literally the game that I sat and I thought about, because no Clayton Oliver, Argonne and Jackson still underdone. It's up at TO Stadium up in Alice Springs, so the weather and the humidity and everything like that is going to affect this game, which is going to make it more of a slugfest, which I think brings Port Adelaide closer into it because it's not about talent, it's about effort, and it's about execution. I'm going to tip Melbourne, but again, this is, I swear I've said this on almost every single game. I could see this going the other way. I can see how Port playing well, again, an underdone Jackson, an underdone Gone, gives Finlayson much more of a chance in it. Some of the forwards for Port Adelaide are starting to kind of find their way. You've got a really solid defensive unit that I think is not going to be troubled too much by the lackluster forward line that has been Melbourne this season. Port is in this. This is going to come down to fourth quarter execution. I think whatever team kicks the least amount of behinds, I think will win this game, because this is going to come down to skill error and goal accuracy. I'm going to tip Melbourne in this one, just because I think when you've got Petrarca, you've got Oliver, you've got Gone. Again, Oliver may not be playing, but still, this is a very talented Melbourne team. They're going to be buoyed a little bit with some of the play. I don't think the loss to Geelong is as negative as some people have kind of made it. Melbourne is still a very good footy team. This is a Port team that if they want to make finals, they can't lose this one. And it's really weird to say that you got to beat the defending Premiers to make finals, but you are a game back from Richmond. This is a great opportunity to stamp yourself as a potential finals. You can't lose this one, which is really weird to say. So unfortunately, I think if Port loses this, they find themselves not making the finals this year. I'm going to tip Melbourne, but Port is in this one with a crack for sure.
Absolutely. And the last game of the round is going to be a really interesting one. One that I have pretty good confidence on, that this team totally won't backstab me after all the hype I've been giving them, especially today. Gold Coast taking on Essendon. I'm going with the Suns in this one. Betting-wise, this is almost a pick'em game. 53% of tippers are going with the Suns over in Marvel Stadium. It'd probably be a little bit different numbers if this was at Metricon. But it is not, unfortunately. We're going with the other end. I'm still confident. Gold Coast, hey, we're finals all the way, baby. I'm riding with them. Ride or die.
All right. Mine's got 60-40. And with the team I'm picking, that's the Gold Coast Suns. Again, I kind of grain of salt a little bit the loss of Brisbane. Because I just don't think Essendon played as good a game as people thought they did. I think Brisbane played a little bit down to them. I think this was a game where Essendon kind of caught Brisbane at just the right time. They're playing just good enough footy to get a win. And a lot of people are kind of jumping on this like, Essendon's back. Essendon's kind of found it. I'm like, compared to the way Gold Coast is playing, Essendon is not back. Essendon still has issues. They still have some things they need to fix. I just think Gold Coast is playing such good footy. There's such positive momentum. You get a jump after this one. I'm going to tip Gold Coast, even at Marvel Stadium, because I think the flat deck, roof there, it's going to help out Gold Coast talent. Because Isaac Rankin didn't play in that game against Richmond. They still won it. Isaac Rankin should be back, which gives them that much more dynamic player on the wing and on the forward line. I'm going to tip Gold Coast in this one.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's sure to be a very interesting round when it comes to scoreboards, and especially when it comes to ladder movement. But that's going to wrap us up for our tips for round 18 of the AFL season. And that's also going to do it for us for our breakdown of round 17 of the season so far. Let us know your thoughts. We covered a wide assortment of topics today. Let us know, is Buddy Franklin out on Sydney? Is Jason Horne-Francis after going somehow stick along with North Melbourne? How do you feel about the Gold Coast Suns making it all the way to the finals this year? And who kind of had the biggest redemption arc over the last couple of weeks? But Donnie, your thoughts in one word or phrase on your favorite villain to good guy redemption arc story.
Oh, jeez. All just kind of depends. And like I'm gonna go old school a little bit, show my age a little bit. I was always redemption arc. As a kid, I always loved Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and the bounce back between the Shredder and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was always fascinating to me. So I was a kid of the late '80s, early '90s. So the fight between Shredder and eventually Krang and all the craziness that was that towards the end of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, both the animated version and eventually the live action versions and the 8 million remakes of the live action
in all time of all time. The live action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Well, the first ones were great. Like the first ones were great. Those early '90s ones in New York were absolutely fantastic. I got to say those were great. So those were always my favorite arc stories. The ninja ones. It was the boy in me, the fighting and all that type of stuff. So
heck yeah,
yeah. So Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and the Shredder was always my favorite.
There's an answer for you, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know in the comments if you thought we were going to be talking about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in this episode. I can guarantee that you were not. We'll have to throw that one on the fourth long bingo because that's for sure going to help you guys get a little bit closer to blackout. But of course, thank you so much for tuning in, especially if you are one of the lucky few that were able to catch that amazing reference by sticking until the end. Of course, you can find all of our stuff over at the YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Rumble, all that fun stuff. We're on social media, on Twitter and Instagram. I spend way too much time on it. Donnie spends not nearly as much time on as I do on it, and I am jealous. Of course, you can find us over at Fourth and Long Media on both platforms, and Coach Hess 40 over on both platforms as well. Or find all of our amazing stuff over at thefourthandlong.com. That's going to do it for us this week, ladies and gentlemen. Go out and keep an eye on your shredder because you never know when they're going to go crazy. Well, am I throwing a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles reference and mixing it with the Transformers reference? You're damn right I did. We'll see you guys next round.